All right, folks, time for our second hour of News One Now. A terrible day for travelers in Atlanta. Passengers across the country stranded due to the airport losing power. They are back online, but it still has caused lots of problems. Plus, I had the pleasure this weekend of hosting the Masters of Funk concert in Memphis. The Barcades, Larry Dotson Sr., has been in the music business 47 years. He is retiring. It was his last concert. They also announced the new lead singer for the Barcades 3.0. We'll show you who that is, and you'll hear from him. Also, today's Fit, Live, Win. Learn how one man beat the doctor's diabetes diagnosis and is now living a healthy life. We'll talk to trainer Jim Jones. Plus, this is the last of 4 live shows of TV One's News One Now. We'll take a look back of some of our hottest conversations, including my sit-down with the white nationalist Richard Spencer. He's still feeling the pain from what took place. It's time to bring the funk. News One Now on TV One. Let's go. All right, folks, lots of drama in Atlanta over the weekend. Power outage yesterday shut down the airport. But remember, when you're a major airport like Hartsfield-Jackson, it just doesn't affect just Atlanta. It impacted the entire country. Thousands stranded. Some planes had to divert to other airports. As a result, the power went out Sunday afternoon, canceling more than 1,000 flights to and from Atlanta. Delta, of course, they had to cancel 900 of those flights. Atlanta Mayor Kasim Reed talked about what took place and what they're doing to fix the problem.
The final step in this process will be making sure that after this fire occurred, that our campus is secure. And we need to make sure, out of an abundance of caution, because we do not know why this fire started, that it is not being used as a tool to get people who typically don't have access to our campus onto our campus. So that is what is going as we speak.
So it was about 6 hours ago that they announced that lights were back on. They were delivering food to the passengers. And wow, you want to know a big deal here? The Atlanta airport folks tweeted, "Lights on and delivering food and water to our passengers. Thank you, Dan, Kathy, and Chick-fil-A for opening on Sunday." Okay, okay, let's play something out. Chick-fil-A does not open on Sundays because its owner, a devout Christian, made it clear that they were never going to open on Sundays. Well, they open on Sunday, provide food for the folks in Atlanta. Now, you know, they even use hashtag Christmas Miracle. And then 4 hours ago, they tweeted TSA checkpoints will open at 3:30. And then power has been restored at, of course, it took place at midnight. Concessions are open. TSA security lines are open. So it looks like Atlanta is trying to get back in the swing of things. And so, and then, of course, talk about just crazy, crazy. Yeah. That not only that you use power, but it knocks out your backup power.
Right. Your
so Atlanta's gonna need backup to the backup because you do not want this to happen for one of the nation's busiest airports.
Absolutely.
All right, folks. Tavis Smiley last week had his television show suspended by PBS as a result of an investigation. He fired back in a Facebook post saying that enough is enough. Walmart, they've said they will not sponsor the show pending the outcome of the investigation. Also, Tavis had a stage play tied to his book on the last year of Dr. King's life that was supposed to begin. Well, that also has been postponed as well. Just a few moments ago, he was on Good Morning America talking about these allegations. Shelley, go to my iPad.
Hey.
Let's see if we can go to it.
First and foremost, you deny any wrongdoing, correct?
Absolutely. I have never groped, I have never coerced, I have never exposed myself inappropriately to anyone in 30 years, over 6 different networks, and there's never been any allegation of that. I celebrate and applaud these women who've had the courage to come out and to tell their truth and lead us in a conversation about how to create healthy workspaces. And I've had some of those women on my program, in fact. At the same time, I want to make sure that we don't lose all sense of nuance and proportionality in this conversation, because if we do, then people end up being guilty simply by accusation.
I want to get more into the conversation a little bit, but you admit to having consensual sexual relationships with your subordinates. Do you understand how that could be viewed as an abuse of power?
Well, absolutely. I certainly understand people who have a viewpoint that any consensual relationship in the workplace is wrong. There are some people who believe that there is no such thing as a consensual relationship in the workplace. I hear that point of view and I respect it. But there are also other points of view on this. My company, and let me be clear, I own my company. PBS distributes my content.
Sure.
In our employee handbook, while we do not encourage office relationships, we don't forbid them either. And we don't forbid them, Paula, because I don't know where your heart's going to lead you. I don't know who you're going to hang out with or date or fall in love with. And indeed, there are millions of Americans watching this program right now who met their spouses at work.
But how can you be certain that these women didn't feel that they were going to lose their job?
Because I never gave any favoritism upward or downward. I never promoted anybody, demoted anybody because of that.
Did you ever fire anyone that you were in a relationship with?
I have never ever given, first of all, I don't run I own the company. There's a team of people that run the company. And I have never given anyone any employment instruction to do anything to anyone with whom I had a consensual relationship.
So you said you didn't fire anyone whom you had a consensual sexual relationship with. Any of those women that you had a relationship with, are they still on your staff?
One person is, yes.
One person is. Were you ever told by a peer, a subordinate, or an employer or employee that anything you did or said made them feel uncomfortable?
Never.
Never. Sources tell ABC News that you've also been accused of, quote, sexually explicit messages and unwelcome banter about women's bodies. So what are we talking about here?
I have no idea. I have no idea. I sat with people.
Did you ever send lewd text messages?
I've never sent lewd text messages to anyone. In a consensual relationship, we use text messages to communicate in consensual relationships. But I've never done that to an employee ever.
Some have alleged that you also created, quote, a verbally abusive and threatening environment. What's your response to that?
Not true. I have an intense environment. I have a television show, a radio program, a podcast. We run a foundation. I have a speakers bureau. We have a book imprint, as you just mentioned a moment ago, as Lindsay did. And so it's a very intense environment. Some of the most intense places in our business are in control rooms around this country. That's not for everyone. So it might be that the environment wasn't good for you. So these environments are intense at times. And I hate the word brand. I may be the brand, the face of my company, but I'm not an inanimate object. I have feelings, I have emotions, and when the ball gets dropped on something, I have to deal with that. So those conversations might be intense, but I'm not an angry black man, and this notion of a hostile environment just doesn't fit.
And you called the TV.
Of course, if you go to Good Morning America Twitter feed, you can actually see the full 9-minute or so, a 6.5-minute interview they did with Tavis Smiley. Joining us right now, Malik Boyd, host of Heart of the City Radio in Philadelphia, along with Victoria Burke, political analyst and writer for NNPA News Service, Eugene Craig III, Republican strategist and CEO of the Eugene Craig Organization, Sue Zoldak, founding CEO of the Zoldak Agency. First, what do you make of Tavis? Because first of all, if you look at, I'm trying to think, of all the different people who've been accused, I don't know how many of them have actually done a major sit-down interview on a national news network.
Right, none of them. The thing is, I want to know what the definition of sexual harassment is. I know what the legal definition is. It's going to be pervasive, repetitive, unwelcomed. Okay. Because if we're going to get into abusive behavior, abusive talk in the workplace, that's a lot of people. If we're going to get into consensual relationships between two employees, whether no matter what their roles are in terms of power, a lot of people, particularly in the news business, will go down. So I find this to be an example of how some of these other cases are very clear-cut. Charlie Rose, Matt Lauer. This, to me, is a new frontier.
So here's the first. We don't know what is fully contained in the PBS investigation. Yeah. We only know what Variety has reported, and Tavis has said, well, Variety dropped that story right after the investigation ended. Sue, I mean, you own a company. What do you make of what Tavis has said? Do you have rules in your company where you say no fraternizing among staff members? And what do you make of what he said there about, well, he said we don't say do it, but we also don't say you can't?
I mean, I know what he's trying to say, differentiating between himself as an owner versus he's not the day-to-day, he's not the COO or the HR, but you can't differentiate yourself like that.
Right.
When you own a company or you brand a company, every single thing that I do, I take responsibility for, whether that happens to an employee of mine that's on the West Coast or whether it happens to somebody that I work with here. I'm going to take responsibility. I'm not going to say, oh, well, that happened in Seattle.
Right.
I don't have anything to do with it or whatever it is. I don't think that's how you responsibly stand up as a CEO of a company. But I do agree. I mean, I think the point here is we have to do a better job along with this conversation of teaching women. I mean, my daughter's sitting here actually in the corner because she doesn't have school today. What does it mean to be sexually harassed? Is it if you get looked at the wrong way, is that sexual harassment? If you're, I mean, what does it mean, and how do you stand up for yourself, and how do you protect yourself? Because the answer can't simply be, file a motion and get that person fired from their job.
Right.
And there has to be some. There has to be something in between.
But here's the deal, Malik. But I also believe, though, that I understand your point, but we also have to train boys and men.
Absolutely.
Because because again, for me, the onus is not just on a woman in the workplace. But also I want to deal with the point that Lauren raised, and that is, what are we now? So what conversations should we now be having? Because do we say, and again, this is where do we say, because we do know that there are people who've actually met at work.
Yeah.
So are we saying, and again, we don't have the full range of this PBS investigation. All we have right now is the allegations that there was consensual relationships. Some folks felt, some people said that they felt they had to enter into them in order to keep their job. Others said that those were engaging in sexual relationships with Tavis got promotions. And so those were all the different pieces we have there. But will this lead to us to have this conversation about consensual relationships in an office place, and who can do it and who can't?
Well, absolutely. So we have to be honest. The pendulum was all the way on the men's side for a long time, and it's now shifted in a very extreme way all the way to the women's side. Somewhere in the middle is where we're going to have that conversation to get our progress. I don't believe that we're there yet. Here's what I will say. Love is an amazing thing. It's an absolutely career-ending and dangerous thing in the workplace when it goes wrong. And so when you engage in that, you take on that risk, and you're not going to be able to back out and say, I'm not the brand.
But is that harassment? Being in a relationship with somebody and it doesn't go right, is that harassment? To me,
it's not harassment, but in this particular season that we're in,
and
this
that's a problem.
mediascape,
That's a big problem because he's paying a price right now, and we don't really know. Now we're doing, guilty until proven innocent.
Absolutely.
So we don't really know what Tavis' situation is. We don't have all the information, but he's now paid a price already. So let's say we find out that it wasn't harassment. Is he going to get all his stuff back?
And that's
what I'm saying?
That's the challenging thing, because consensual relationships are now falling into the
Which is
landscape
incredible. There's
of
two people
sexual
involved.
harassment
I'm not saying that there's not harassment. This is a very serious issue. Women get harassed, but a woman makes a decision too in this to get involved in a relationship.
I'm glad you said that, and it wasn't me.
All right. I mean, the idea that somehow these men are coercing these women and forcing them. No. If you're attracted to somebody and you get in a relationship, these are consensual. These are adults. And as somebody who worked at ABC News for 4 years, I'm shocked to find that somebody's in trouble for a consensual relationship with somebody at work. I mean, I'm like, what? Because the whole place would have been fired when I was there. I mean, stuff does happen. People do have affairs. These are adult people.
But Eugene, I mean, what we have seen now what we have seen. First of all, we're now seeing companies forced to take the issue for real. Second of all, not just sort of blow off allegations by saying, well, look, y'all just got to work that whole thing out. And so we're seeing that. And so there's tremendous value to what we're seeing, and there's no doubt in my mind that Donald Trump is the impetus for this, because of this anger sort of. And so you could say they ain't political, but I'm telling you, when you look at how this thing has all of a sudden just developed, you've never seen something move this fast.
Yeah.
I mean, so there's sort of this anger, if you will, how folks are responding, I think is quite interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, it was, it's never been that in the forefront in our faces as it was in the 2016 election and with the boldness and the arrogance around it. But in particular to Tavis Smiley here, I think Lauren pointed out that he's probably the first that's doing a major sit-down interview around it. I also want to point out he's the first that's actively fighting back.
Yeah.
And actively fighting back. And so I think it's going to be a process. It's going to be this is a moment in history. It's going to be an asterisk on the timeline. But I have to see what happens here.
Sue, final comment.
Well, it just, look, he's fighting back. It's this, it's that. I think I agree with everyone. It's really dangerous when you get into a workplace relationship, because even if it's consensual and then after it ends, people get upset for years, years and years. This could go on where you say, oh, the person's still intimidating me at work. So I think clearly, like you said, we're over here. We're siding on one side, and before we were over here, and somewhere in the middle we have to set some boundaries and teach both men and women some rules of engagement, so to speak, and say, how can we do this as a society and have everything be okay.
All right, folks, when we come back on News One Now, our final Fit, Live, Win segment, we'll talk with trainer Jim Jones about how he helped one man overcome diabetes and get off the meds in record time. That's next. News One Now on TV One.
Hi, I'm BB Winans, and you're watching News One Now with Roland Martin on TV One.